If I have learned anything in my 30 years of being on this planet, it's that every time I want to do an intro, there's an interruption. Okay, so if there's one thing I've learned in my 30 years of being on this planet, it's that sometimes there's nothing quite as satisfying. If there's one thing I've learned in my 30 years of life, it's that sometimes I like jaffles. I bought myself a jaffle iron, going camping on the weekend. Every time I've made jaffles, on quite a number of occasions, dirt and sand and whatnot gets inside the jaffle iron. So I'm going to make myself a rocket stove to take camping with me this weekend. Don't know what a rocket stove is? Too bad. I've got this piece of 125mm square tube. I wasn't really sure what size to get, so I got this 125mm, which is 5mm wall thickness, and it's bigger and more heavy duty than I expected. I didn't really know what I was getting when I bought it, but it does just happen to be that the jaffle iron fits perfectly on there. You'll understand what all of this is once it's underway. The issue is that the jaffle iron isn't balanced very well, so it'll fall off, so I need to figure that out. The most simple way of making a rocket stove is 3 pieces of tube. You have a piece like so, another piece that comes up vertical, open here, so it's like one open chamber, and then off of here you have a 45, which also has a hole in it. You put some firewood in here and you light it, and it draws air in this end. Hot air rises, which draws more air through, forces the flame up, and you get a little like rocket stove, hence the name. I'm not explaining this very well, which is not a surprise in the slightest. So let's just jump into it. So I have a 1 meter length. This thing is going to turn out far more squat than I had anticipated. 125mm is bigger than I had mentally pictured. I have a meter, which should give me, I need 3 pieces. I could go 2 35s and a 30. I think that might be what I do. There's a couple of ways that I could do this. One being, I could cut 3 lengths. That's not gonna work, is it? I could cut 3 lengths, like so. No, not like so. Let's pretend that never happened. And then I need one that has a 45 cut on it. And then when you assemble these, you would have one here, one here, and then you'd have to make this a hollow, and then you'd have your 45 coming off of here, and this would need to be hollow. But the problem that leaves is that this end is also open, so I would have to weld that shut as well. So we want this to be one chamber, all 3 connected, closed here, open, open, open. And if I was to change the orientation like this, and then the 45 out here, I would have this end open, which would be something I'd have to weld shut as well. So the most simple solution is to cut this at a 45. So if I was to cut here, it would give me 2 cuts that are the same angle, and then I could rotate it so that my pieces look like this when I rotate them and join them together, whereby then this is a closed side, this is a closed side. Then I would just need my 45 off of here. So this would be the only hole that I would actually have to cut. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, an issue that I have is that I don't actually have a device for measuring, a tool for measuring a 45. For those of you that didn't know this, these wood saws have these 2 edges here. This is 90, this is 45. it'll be this tall. Now I'm faced with the question of, do I try and plasma cut this or do I use the angle grinder? Now I'm just going to have a look at what I'm left with here, how much material I have left, and how much I want to put on here. So naturally, this thing hasn't worked how I thought it was gonna. The width of the tubing, the 125mm tubing, is too wide for the 1 meter length that I got. I was thinking of making it 30 by 30 roughly, so 3 lengths of 30. But that would make it this dumpy little thing where I feel like the combustion chamber is just going to be all messed up. So what I'm going to do, this first dash here should be where the top of my next piece is going to sit. So I need to cut this entire section out so that that's open for when there's a piece there that it can breathe through the entirety of the thing. So that's that mark there, and I think that this mark here is where I'm going to cut it off. So this will be the base and this will be the back, so it will be taller, and then I'll cut, to begin with, I'll cut 90 and then I'll cut the 45 here, which that piece can sit here then. This is not ideal. I think all of the proportions are wrong, and I don't know if it's going to give me the effect that I want of the air rising through and drawing it and really turning it into a rocket stove as such. I mean, there's only one way to find out. That cut was a disgrace. Look at that mess. Oh well, that's roughly how it's going to be, except it'll be upright. I've got one more bit to cut, up to here. The beauty of metalwork, especially when using such thick material, 5mm, is that when you make a mistake like I did with the dodgy cuts and they're all uneven and whatnot, you can weld them closed again. So I'm not too concerned about any mistakes I make, because I can square it all up, make sure it's sitting right before I weld it back together. I know I said, the good thing about metalwork is if you make a mistake you can weld it up. That's a pretty big hole. That's going to take some work. But for now, I'm going to take a flat disc on the angle grinder and just clean up all the burrs and gross bits, and then I'll come back and we'll weld it together. I kind of screwed the pooch on this one, and in the name of honesty and always showing things the way they are, I feel maybe I should show you this. With these dodgy cuts the way they are, this is the closest fit I can get without grinding and grinding and grinding and grinding. On the side that's touching the floor, everything is nice and flush and square and clean and all the good things that you want. I think what I'm going to end up doing is getting everything as close as possible to good, and then put some tacks in where the steel does connect, and then flip it over to the good side, put some tacks in there, and just work my way around, rotating, moving this whole thing, and just slowly, really slowly fill all these gaps up. It's gonna take a long time. I'll see you back here in a few hours. Okay. There it is. It took a bit of doing, but indeed, I got there. So now that it's done, this is the way it'll sit. Firewood goes in here and it just rests in here. Flames going away down here. The hot air rising out the stack then draws more air in through here, increasing the heat. I believe it's a cycle. But anyway, next step is going to be sorting out some legs or feet or stands or whatever. I'm just going to use these offcuts of 40 by 40 square tube. Make it 120, and then I'll cut this off at 120 on this side. And that is the foundation done. I'll continue the rest tomorrow. Alright, it's the next day. And it's time to figure out how to get my jaffle iron to stay on there without falling off. I have a bunch of different pieces of angle iron, offcuts of 5mm by 50mm. This is the pieces that I cut from the square tubing, and then I've got some round bar and some square bar. One of the things that I've realised is that maybe having it on there like that is gonna kind of snuff the flame. I don't think it will, but I want to see it a little bit off. So what I'm thinking of doing is putting a couple of rails across of flat stock, square bar, that the jaffle iron can sit on, which will give a little bit of room underneath. And then to stop it from falling, I'm thinking something like a piece of angle or something on top that this can slide under, and that will hold it in place. That's my thoughts for now. We'll see. So I've got my square bar rails on top. Just going to stick them in place. Alrighty, they're in place. I don't know how to go about the next. I don't know what to do next. Sometimes the most simple solution is the best. I have bent this piece of flat stock and I'll cut it down to size, weld it to the outside, and then all that needs to happen is when this goes in and out, just drop it in on an angle and it will catch here, can't fall out. So I'm going to cut this down, weld it on, and I think we'll be done. How did I know? I don't understand. I made these markings when this hoop was in place over this. Everything was where it was meant to be. And now, it doesn't actually lower flat for some reason. Alright, I guess I'll see if I can break these welds. Got him. Yep, not sure how, but my markings were too low. Let's hope it's in the right spot, because I think those welds were a bit stronger. There we go. Bob's your uncle. So I'm going to go ahead and weld that on nice and good. Nice and good indeed. So there it is. I've cut the legs down on both sides so they're even. I smoothed off all of the edges so there's no more sharp edges anymore. And I just shaped this thing a little bit different. Just looks a bit nicer, and it also helps to just get that in there, and it doesn't bind up like it was. So the next step is just going to be to throw some high temperature paint on it, which currently I don't have, so I'll have to buy some on the way home from work tomorrow, and I have to finish this tomorrow because I'm taking it camping the day after.